It suits me fine, actually, yeah, because I can go and shopping and stuff, not be recognised. Occasionally someone comes up to me, it's quite nice, if people do, but it's the characters that are known, which is the preferable way, yeah, for me, definitely. I'm quite shy kind of person.
It's an odd thing, really, because most people come into show business to want to be the star. Presumably you're the opposite of that you want your characters to be the stars.
Yeah, I mean, I have an ego. I like, it's quite nice sometimes. But yeah, the characters are the stars. And I feel a bit sorry for people who are very famous, because you're not always in the mood to cope with people coming up to you to ask for things, autographs and stuff. So that doesn't affect me, which is very nice, really.
What are you most proud of? Is there a single film you've made or a single animation that you've put together that you are determined is going to be the best thing of your career?
The most satisfying, looking at it that way, I think for me has been the original Creature Comforts. Just because it was very short. It took kind of 5 months to do the whole thing. About 3 months to do the filming. And, recording people's voices was much easier than writing a script, because it was using real, vox pop interviews and just editing that, really, and then thinking of who can be what animal and designing the animals and then animating it, which took a bit of time. But then that 5-minute film then won an Oscar. So when you spend, 5 years on a movie, the amount of effort you put in is enormous, for what you get out of it. I think the other thing I feel particularly proud of, I guess, is The Wrong Trousers. For me, that was... Well, it's the one that gets the critical acclaim above all of the Wallace and Gromit films, really. I mean, this one's been enjoying a lot of that as well, which is great. But The Wrong Trousers, as a 30-minute film, it suited 30 minutes really well and was just the right size of story, and just the ideas, the penguin and the techno trousers, and it was a nice group of ideas, and it was quirky, and people hadn't seen that kind of thing before, so it was all new, and it's very hard to repeat that kind of originality again.
The thing that I find most fascinating, if it's taking 5 years to make a 90-minute film, how do you know anywhere in those 5 years that you haven't lost the plot and it's become unfunny, or you haven't got a plot anymore?
Yeah, that was the difficulty, about taking on such a long haul project, is that I think first of all you've got to have an idea that almost like demands to be made, really. I don't think I could do it if it was motivated by anything else, by money or awards or any kind of commercial or public expectation. It's got to be something that really grabs me, and it's got to be funny, the outset. It's got to be basically absurd and funny, in its concept, And I think it was when this idea struck me, it was automatic, really, that I had to make this film. And then it's a matter of, you can easily lose confidence in ideas over the time. Many times that happened. In fact, that's why it's been good working with Steve Box, who was the other director on the movie. And we were very much writing it together and from the beginning. And it's... With big animated films like this, you've got to have two directors, I think, 'cause not just to kind of share the load, but it's like a companion as well. And Steve was always very good at helping me keep confidence in my own sensibilities, and especially when there were studio pressures and to compromise and everything. Everybody else has an objective point of view on your film except you.
I suppose the other problem as well is not having too many people involved, because you don't want too many opinions that can take you one way and distract you with, oh, well, this gag's better or that scene would be funnier. You've actually just got to get on and make it, and then hope at the end that you've made the right decision.
You're so involved with getting every little sound effect, every piece, every music cue, every timing of every joke exactly right, and you work on every single thing in such detail, and you've no idea. And so when we've got the first reviews in, and I saw the first audience reaction, it was just relief more than anything that it worked. Never mind any awards. I was just relieved it worked.
Your medium animation has to be the most time intensive, even compared to a Hollywood blockbuster. They would never have the budget to spend 5 years on one 90-minute film, would they?
No, I suppose not. I mean, 3 years of that was sort of writing and designing and developing and storyboarding, So the actual filming itself took about 1.5 to 2 years. That was, a crew of 250 people. About 50 of those were model makers, and about 30 of them were animators. and a very slow process. It's very labour intensive. When you see the credits on any big CGI computer animated film, it's about the same number of people, in fact.
Wallace and Gromit has become one of those Christmas favourites that if you don't see it, it somehow isn't Christmas. How have you managed to do that?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, it hasn't happened overnight. It happened with A Grand Day Out, which is the first Wallace and Gromit film, which was partly started off as a college film. I started at the National Film and TV School, and then brought it with me to Aardman in Bristol. And I think it wasn't known. It took a long time for A Grand Day Out to sort of take off, really, because I did Creature Comforts just at the end, towards the end of making that, and that sort of stole the limelight because it won the first Oscar back in 1990, and then sort of Wallace and Gromit was a kind of slow burn thing, really, that people gradually got to see it and started to respond to it, and then over about 6 or 7 years, BBC were interested in doing a second and then Wrong Trousers, and then Close Shave. Every couple of years we did another one, and they started to slowly become a kind of a holiday fixture. And Creature Comforts, I guess, because it's comedy and it's light and it's got a kind of British, kind of cozy Britishness at the same time. I hope a kind of quirkiness,
And that's, I think, why the parents like it as well, because there's kind of two levels to it. I was saying to you as we came into the studio, the more you kind of get the idea of your animation, the more you look out for it. For example, the fridge was called Smug, not Smeg. Now, I wonder how many people actually notice that, because that's a very cleverly crafted gag that's there for the taking if you want it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's in a way why I think they've always done quite well on video and DVD as well, because people get to stop the frames and read the gags and notice the little background things. I think it comes from the fact that it is, because it's models, from back when I used to do it all myself, before working with larger teams of, back at college, I just got a lot of fun out of making the models and putting in all these little references that were just personal. They weren't actually meant to be noticed by anybody to start with, because I didn't want them to kind of distract from the story. But they've more and more have gone in, over the years. And sometimes the model makers come up with ideas, or the set builders, and you see somebody's name on a street, or or whatever.
Are there any comedy writers for your animations, or is it all just your ideas and people there who go, "Why, that's a funny gag, we could stick that in"? Like all filmmaking, it's a very collaborative effort. And on this film, I worked heavily with Steve Box on the writing, and another writer, Mark Burton, who's done a lot of gag writing for BBC and what have you. And he was a writer on Madagascar as well. So it's a very collaborative effort, but an awful lot of the stuff comes together in the first few weeks, even the first week, actually, because as soon as you have the idea and it's going to run, it's just a field day, really. You can't stop. When you have an idea, it just kind of sparks off in lots of directions. So that's kind of, in a way, the easy bit. But I think as you work for longer and longer, because it takes so long to do animation, you have time to keep coming up with stuff, and you sort of, the danger is or maybe it's the strength of it as well, you get not bored, but you get used to your own gags, and so you constantly are thinking you need more. So it becomes like wall to wall. So you actually have to stop yourself then?
In a way, yeah. But then the bad gags fall away, and so hopefully you're left with just the good ones. But I say that all kinds of gags stay in, but you're not sure about afterwards. Lots of like really painful puns.
How do you manage to make Gromit say so much without saying anything? It is amazing to me, especially when you watch it in a cinema on that big screen, how you know what he's thinking, you know what he's saying, yet he never says a word. Yeah,
in a way, Gromit's the hardest thing, probably of the whole movie. Has always been the hardest thing, and for other people to pick up on. We, as animators, we have these very rigorous Wallace and Gromit classes that everyone goes through. Spends days trying to capture different expressions, and just by moving Gromit's brow, and in a way that for me is the beauty of working with clay, because Gromit was born out of being clay. I don't know if he would have happened in quite the same way if he was designed on a computer, because even going right back to my days at college when I first designed Gromit, he was actually going to have a mouth and he was going to do a lot of barking. I even recorded a voice for Gromit once.
Really?
With the guy who did Bill and Ben and Spotty Dog.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Peter Hawkins.
So what made you drop that then?
Well, it was when I came to do the first shot in A Grand Day Out. It was so difficult to get in there with my hands and manipulate his mouth that I just tried. You couldn't see his mouth at the time, but it was kind of behind his nose. And I tried moving his eyebrows because it's all I could reach, really. And in that moment, in a way, Gromit was born because it was pure laziness, really. But I found that just by moving his eyebrow up and down, he could speak volumes and didn't need a mouth. And he suddenly became also introvert and the intelligent one. And so the whole role reversal suddenly happened in an instant. And
it's such a clever idea as well, One Man and His Dog. When did it come to you that there were so many opportunities with just such a simple idea? And let's face it, all the best ideas are simple, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it was very much out of economy, I guess, being a college student, and it was hard to get any, as I say, it's collaborative filmmaking, yeah. But as a student, it was, because animation takes so long, it was really hard to get anyone in to light it, do the camera work or produce it. I ended up having to do a lot of it, all the model making and animation myself, and so it's pure economy that I made him into a single bachelor guy. He was going to be on his own to start with, and he was going to actually have a cat as a companion. But I just found a dog easier to make out of plasticine because it was like bigger, rounder shapes, and you could get your fingers around it. And
so really, Wallace and Gromit really is just laziness. That's basically
yeah. I mean, I hadn't, you have a very limited budget and time, so you go for the least number of characters you can cope with, really.
I'd love to do a survey and find out what people love more, whether it's Wallace's face or Wallace's voice. Because Peter does such a great job of encapsulating his dippiness, yet his creativeness. I mean, it was so perfect. Did you know from the beginning that Peter Sallis was the guy you needed for that role?
Yeah, I mean, this was back in 1982 as a college student. I knew him from Last of the Summer Wine, and from the very beginning he was my first choice. And I approached him really as a student, and I think I might have paid him 50 quid or something, but he really did it as a favour, I think, for a poor student. I remember he came in for a morning and recorded, and I just loved the way he said cheese, and that suddenly Wallace's mouth went extra wide, and Wallace's character very much came from Peter's voice and the way he said Wensleydale, and so Peter did very much create the character in that sense. A journalist recently said Peter Sallis's voice is like a pair of warm slippers in an uncertain world. I think that's very much the appeal.
That's
really
brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, it absolutely is. And presumably Peter has no problem doing this for the rest of his life and career, because I mean, it is just so brilliant for him.
We me and Steve are quite fussy about we have a very strong idea of what every single kind of line of dialogue should be.
You're not like a Royal Shakespeare Company director who's telling him how to say every word. And no, we don't want it, like in that. Are you really like that?
I am, actually. It's like the animation, you kind of know how everything should be. But, obviously with actors like Peter and Ray Fiennes and Helena Bonham Carter and all the others, they give you so much more that you don't expect as well. And there are certain things, Peter would tell you I'm very fussy about.
Have you got a favourite line that Peter said for you in, obviously, this character that you wrote that just sums up the character for you, or that you're just so proud of? Is there a single line that you can pick out?
Gosh, that's a difficult one. I mean, what's really funny is that many of his lines have become kind of catchphrases, cracking toast Gromit was one of the first ones. And so everything's cracking now, when people say cracking, they think of Wallace and Gromit. Yep. And a lot of it, has come from Bob Baker, who was a very influential writer on Wrong Trousers and Close Shave. And a lot of these things, which was very much a Bobism, actually, was no use prevaricating about the bush, and things like. And I love the way Peter delivers those lines. He's got his own stamp all the time.
He has got one of the best voices in show business. It's just fantastic. And as I say, he just makes it so warm. And that's the great thing about it. You kind of feel as if you know him.
Yes, you do. You do. He's got such a lot of character. Partly it was the kind of tones in his voice. Just those little kind of... you find yourself while you're animating, kind of coming out with Wallaceisms all the time. And all those little... There's almost a thought process goes on in all these, which is usually a very vague, blank thought process. But I've always been quite keen to kind of, in a way, put my own stamp and style on things that I do. But... without it seeming too kind of forced, and from the beginning of Wallace and Gromit, the wide mouth and also speaking with very fundamental shapes, for the vowels, lots of very obvious shapes for the vowels. It's also a very northern thing, I guess, to use the lips a lot. And especially the bottom row of teeth.
I thank you for doing this because you're an incredibly private man, it seems to me. You don't do many interviews. Is it just you want your work to speak for itself, or you don't like talking to journalists?
No, I don't mind. I think it's it's hard to always say what you mean. On air. I like doing interviews though when it's nice and relaxed and conversational. Like anyone, to talk about your work is, it's great to be able to talk about it. I think I get, especially when it's kind of gets busy, and around publicising the film, it gets incredibly tiring. I kind of enjoy making films more than I do talking about them, I suppose. But it's nice to do. Like today, it's relaxed and not too many interviews.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad I'm not annoying you. That's the main thing. So let's talk about your upbringing now and your life as a child. And I can only presume that you were scribbling and drawing through your entire childhood to be this talented now. Was it always a passion of yours?
Yeah. It's something... I always loved to draw as a kid and make models. And, my family was always very creative and always lots going on. And my dad was a photographer and... showed me which end of a camera to look down, and my mum's always been into making clothes, and so there's always offcuts of stuff as well to play around with. But I also feel very lucky that it's a creative environment, but always lots of encouragement to be creative, and if you have a talent to use it, and in whatever way, was always the kind of atmosphere I was brought up in. And I just love drawing cartoons. I love the Beano. I was an avid reader of the Beano, and I wanted to draw cartoons like that. I did my own cartoon strips sometimes, and then when I was about 13, I discovered that my mum's home movie camera, it's like an 8mm Bell & Howell camera, could take single frames, which, no one knew about animation then. So to have an ordinary camera that happened to have an animation button on it, I kind of wonder how that found its way to me. And then I started trying out different, like cut-out animation. I started mimicking Terry Gilliam's work for Monty Python, and I love that kind of surreal, wacky humour, and I love the wobbly artwork of Bob Godfrey for Rhubarb and Custard, or so I tended to go for things which were less sophisticated as the Disney approach, and then I saw Morph on the TV and stuff on Vision On, very creative program, and I started mimicking anything I saw really from the age of 13, 14, 15, and plasticine was always around, so I liked techniques that were kind of very much in front of the camera and very immediate, rather than involving lots of technique and precision and know-how.
Is being an artist a different talent to being creative with plasticine and making something like Wallace and Gromit, and yet you can't draw anything, or do the two deliberately go together? I think they do. I started off wanting to be a cartoonist, and I think being able to draw really does help, actually. I don't think all the animators are not necessarily, brilliant at drawing, but most have some ability. Graphics and a sense of design and a sense of, composition, and, it's all quite important, because it's not just cartoon, it's not just comedy, it's about filmmaking and about composing shots and having a kind of overall vision for the movie as well. What I love about this kind of animation is that it's a mixture of all the things I've always loved, from all the comedy and slapstick of cartoons, and with clay you can be very much like a Warner Brothers cartoon in terms of squash and stretch. When you bash Wallace's head, it can go into his shoulders and pop out again. At the same time, it's very 3D, so we have
expert lighting camera people, so you can play around with the camera, and it's a kind of a convergence of all these things I've always loved.
What's your greatest talent? Is it being an artist and creating these amazing models that you make? Is it observing people? Because that's the thing that you're really brilliant at, is finding a character like Wallace, taking that from real life, we all know someone like Wallace, and then putting it into the animation. What is your biggest skill?
Oh, my biggest skill? I don't know. I mean, I like, best of all, coming up with ideas, I think. I love working at the storyboard stage, and I like kind of taking a situation and trying to draw out as much comedy from that situation as I can, and trying to be a bit different, and a bit, how can I be? As soon as you feel an idea is becoming like something else, then how do I change it and find a slightly different angle? And one thing I suppose I've found myself, and I guess this is a tradition in Aardman, Peter Lord and David Sproxton, they were doing it before I got there, but on Creature Comforts, what I love about clay is that you can, even though it's animals in that case, you can bring out very human observations and traits. I think it's because you have this figure sat in front of the camera that's inanimate, and it's made of clay, and the film runs at 24 frames per second, so every 24 times you move the figure, you get 1 second of film in the can. But it means as an animator, you're almost like an actor, in that you're trying to put your emotion into the character, and by tweaking it, you're very hands-on every single frame of film. So kind of emotion tends to come through the clay because you're able to manipulate it in very small increments, and almost with feeling every single frame.
So 24 pictures make 1 second of film. So how small are the nuances that you're changing, for example, Gromit's ears in each of these films? Minute, are they?
Yeah. I mean, I have a Gromit here.
This is radio. Nothing gets past me. But you've actually brought in the real models with you. And they're quite tiny.
Yeah.
They're the real size that you actually film with, are they?
Yeah, Gromit here is about 5 inches high, something like that. Wallace is about 9 inches high. And it's made of your ordinary plasticine, and Gromit's got his famous eyebrow there, and he looks rather I don't know, bewildered or something there. We have him in front of the camera like that, and the animator, we just tweak his eyebrows slightly like that, take a frame, move it again slightly, take a frame, and it varies. Through practice you get to learn how far to move things. And
I'm used to the bewildered look in my radio studio for some reason.
But Gromit, he can change expression dramatically in very small increments.
How do you know whether it's going to work?
Well, there are ways that we have these days of, you can monitor the movement, on a digital frame store as you're going, and so you can kind of see what you're doing as it's kind of slowly, it's taking frames as you're working, and you can see it in playback. I'm a bit old school in that sense, in that people like Steve and myself, and we used to do it blind, really, where you couldn't see it played back. You had to wait till the film came back from the labs before you saw anything, and so you tended to. It was almost you kind of use the force, you put away the technology, and we sometimes encourage the animators to rely more on their instincts, that come through practice. And that I think often can get better results, because you tend to be a bit more adventurous and less kind of relying on the technology.
How did you go from being a kid that's playing with plasticine and seems to be quite good to actually turning it into a multi-million-pound business?
Oh, well, I mean, I suppose it's been a lot of people, a lot of support from a lot of people at Aardman. I've been a part of Aardman ever since I left college.
That was 1985, wasn't it?
About 1985, yeah. I was halfway through a grand day out at the National Film and TV School, and I ran out of time and money, and then Aardman offered to help me finish the film in Bristol. That was just a very small company at the time, doing things like Morph for Take Heart. And so, because I worked part-time for Aardman for a long time, and so the film took it's all 7 years altogether to finish that. It was very much a single-handed effort. And I think things have slowly grown, as the company slowly expanded. We did the Sledgehammer video for Peter Gabriel, and many commercials, and so the studio's slowly grown. But, I guess Wallace and Gromit has been the kind of signature thing we've become known for over the years.
I mean, I could never do your job because I have short-term attention span at the best of times. You must be the most patient man in the world to be able to spend 5 years on one project and be as dedicated to it at the beginning as you are at the end. I mean, it's an odd state of mind, isn't it, to be able to take the time to take 24 pictures to make 1 second of film.
Yeah, it is. I think when we did our own projects that we probably did need a lot of patience, really. The animators, I mean, they're under such pressure to shoot as fast as they can. You can't afford to do more than one take. Sometimes we had to, and they've got, like any film, you've got all these production pressures to keep moving. So in a funny way, there isn't time, to need patience, because we're shooting on all these sets simultaneously and trying to get film in the can. I mean, it may sound slow, but 2 minutes a week is actually quite fast for animation. We were rocketing through.
I mean, you're literally working every hour God sends, are you? 7 days a week when you're in production?
Yeah, I mean, each animator's doing about 2 or 3 seconds a day, which amounts to quite a lot of rushes every morning, and it doesn't sound a lot, but I think as well, when you really believe in something and, it's a work of art and you don't think about how much it takes. A shot may last 2 or 3 seconds, but it's one hell of a 2 or 3 seconds. It's amazing how much you can fit into 3 seconds of film time.
Is there any other way of doing this now, or that you would be happy to do? I mean, could you make a Wallace and Gromit film on a computer without having to take all these pictures and do it the old-fashioned way?
We're keeping up with digital technology very much. We're even doing a fully CGI, computer-generated film, coming out later this year about rats in the London sewers called Flushed Away. But with Wallace and Gromit, I mean, we have put them into, we've done the computer games and we've tried putting them into in computer on film, With Wallace and Gromit, I don't know, it's the clay feel is really important. It's important, all those small nuances and shifts of expression. And, I think it does rely on being plasticine myself. The CG versions we've done tend to look a bit robotic. I wouldn't really like to see a film done like that myself. Not with Wallace and Gromit anyway.
Are these like your kids?
Yeah, I mean, they are family. I've grown up with them. I mean, they are I did other stuff at college, but these are the first thing I've done which have actually taken off. So they are like my kids.
I suppose the only thing is kids normally cost you money and they make you money, so I suppose they're good kids, aren't they?
Yeah, and I've seen them on the covers of magazines and things. I felt quite proud, of my kids doing well out there.
Let's get through a few things before you go. The fire that had so many headlines. Is this a PR stunt? The film's released on Monday. The place burns down on Saturday.
It was even closer, actually. It was actually the morning I heard that we'd got to the #1 in the US box office. Within the same hour, I heard that the whole warehouse of the whole history of Aardman had burnt down, or was burning down at the time.
How did you feel?
Well, I mean, something else kind of put it all in perspective, really, is that I'd also spent that morning watching the news about the Pakistan earthquake, and with people digging their families out of wreckage, and so when I actually heard about the fire, I mean, obviously, no one had been hurt, so that was lucky and good news. But it automatically put it in a perspective, so I actually didn't react that badly to it. It wasn't much effort to do that.
But I suppose there was still stuff that was close to your heart, irreplaceable. There were awards that you'd won back in the beginning. There was nothing to do with The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, was it, as I understand it?
No, that was in a separate exhibition.
So it must be kind of hard in a way that you've lost everything before that. Is that right? There's nothing left of the first stuff you did?
Well, yeah, at the time, the more I thought about it, the more I heard what had been destroyed. I think we had lost about £2.5 million worth of stuff. And it was mainly like sets from Wrong Trousers and all the earlier Wallace and Gromit films and storyboards. My own personal storyboards I'd done, which were all framed for exhibitions. And the stuff did make really lovely exhibitions that people seem to like to see, behind the scenes stuff. And so if I think about it too much, it could be quite sad to think about it. I mean, in a way, I felt sorry for the people who'd kept the exhibition looking really good, over the years, and it was a lot of work went into it. But as far as I'm concerned, it was made for the films and it had its use. And in a way, I was I was touched by how it was so much. We got such a lovely reaction from people that I didn't realise it meant so much.
Well, I think people believe that Wallace and Gromit are real.
Yeah,
it's a bit like Coronation Street. We believe that those characters really do exist, and when we heard that their home had burnt down and they'd gone with it, it just had the most peculiar reaction across the country. People were genuinely upset for you.
I know. I was really amazed because I was getting letters from. I mean, from people in Los Angeles as much as from Britain. I got a letter from Prince Charles.
Did you really?
A very kind of heartfelt letter, actually, of saying how sad he was to hear about it and wishing us all the best.
The final question I want to ask you about this: do we know why it happened or how it happened?
They believe it was an electrical fault.
So it wasn't malicious, at least?
No, it was suspected it was something because there'd been a few fires started around that area, but yeah, they've no evidence of arson, I don't think.
Okay, let's move on to matters more pleasant. Your international success, the fact that, as you say, in America you've hit #1, you're winning awards left, right and centre, Oscars, BAFTAs, Annies, I believe you keep winning. How do you feel? Does it bother you? Does it matter? Does it give you any better feeling than seeing a 90-minute film that you've made over 5 years anyway?
I like winning awards. No, I think because they take so long to make, the long-haul nature of animation is you have to really do it for the love of it, and I think that's what motivates us all at Aardman, really. But it's nice, having done all that work, to get recognition, and I was relieved just that the film was working for some people, that we'd done something right, to start with. So now to go on to get awards is nice, I don't mind,
I've only known you for about an hour or so, but I can't imagine you're the kind of guy that would want to go to the Oscars.
I mean, I wouldn't associate myself with the Oscars. When I first went there, you think, oh gosh, I made this plasticine animated film, and I'm here with these like wall-to-wall celebs, Dustin Hoffman, and everywhere you look, it's like in some kind of strange dream, where everyone you've ever heard of is in one room.
What about that feeling that they know who you are? Because that's odd, isn't it? The fact that you know who they are because they're big stars, but you don't think you are, yet they know who you are and they want to talk to you. How do you deal with that?
I never know if they do, actually. I never assume anyone knows who I am. So, because you get invited to these, parties, and Elton John's party and stuff. I remember if you stood there with an Oscar, people just come up to you and shake your hand. And, I remember Tom Hanks coming up to me. He had no idea who I was. This was with Wrong Trousers, I think. And he just said, "Great speech." And I there was someone there telling me who I'd met after I'd met them, because I didn't recognise anyone. That was Claudia Schiffer. That was Prince.
It's amazing.
Yes, it is weird, actually.
Who have you been most overwhelmed by when they've watched one of your films and they've come back to you and said, "This is the best thing I've ever seen. It's made me laugh, it's made me cry"? Is there any single person who you didn't imagine? I suppose having a letter from Prince Charles is a pretty nice accolade, isn't it? But who else has impressed you with their interest in Wallace and Gromit?
Oh gosh, I can't think really. Gosh, off the top of my head. When Prince Charles first, when I heard that he'd seen Wallace and Gromit, and things you never imagine who's watching, because it's been on TV at Christmas and holiday times, you can't ever imagine who's watching. And so, I'm an ambassador for the Prince's Trust, and I was just stood there, with a glass of champagne in my hand, and Elton John came up to me and introduced himself, and I wouldn't have imagined he knew who I was. It's just people, isn't it? So it's...
I think you've got a fantastic life because you're a huge, whopping, great big star that has got such great things around you. You've won so many awards, so many people respect you, so many people love you, and moreover, the public just love what you do. Yet you can go in Sainsbury's and nobody will bother you. I can't think of a better way to live your life.
Yeah, it's perfect, really. It is the best balance, really. Yeah, I feel like I've got it best of both worlds, really.